What's going on YouTube? It's Teej back again with another video, and today coming at you with round 2 in my updated 3-round mock draft. Yesterday was round 1, tomorrow will be round 3, so definitely can you just stick around the channel and subscribe if you are new looking for more draft content. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. Be sure to hit that like button if you do, and real quick before we get started, I'm going to showcase the best players still available on the board. And in the meantime, of course, I want to ask that you leave your thoughts down below in the comment section. This is just a catalyst for a conversation. So who's your favorite team? And were you excited about the picks I gave your favorite team in round 1? How do you feel about round 2? And if you want to wait till tomorrow and give me the full 3-round grade, I'd be more than happy to hear your thoughts and feedback down below in the comment section. Who goes too high? Who goes too low? Let me hear your takes in the comment section. So, with all that down, let's go ahead and jump right into it and start out with anything but a shocker. Anton Harrison going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Corner, offensive tackle, pretty much been my bread and butter for Pittsburgh. It's the two areas where I think they desperately need an upgrade. And plus, bringing in Isaac Seumalo, man, if you were to get a polished pass protector like Anton Harrison on the left side, yeah, maybe not the highest of strength profiles in this year's class. That's actually one of his weaknesses. But I think once you get to the NFL level, you can figure that out. I think that, workout regimen and strength and conditioning program at the NFL level is a different beast. I also think his last year at Oklahoma, he got a little bit stronger. I already think he's starting to make some headway there. So he may not be the dynamic run blocker that Pittsburgh's looking for. So therefore, maybe this isn't the best fit in their eyes. But man, you put him at left tackle, move Dan Moore over to the right side, let him compete with Chukwuma Okorafor. Whoever wins that battle is your starter at right tackle. And then Anton Harrison plus Seumalo on that left side of the offensive line. You're looking a whole lot better on that side of the ball, which makes Kenny Pickett better and makes Najee Harris better, and it makes me very happy as a Steelers fan. Next up, the Houston Texans at 33. I'm going to give them John Michael Schmitz. I think these top three centers, John Michael Schmitz, Luke Weipler, and Joe Tippmann are all going to come off the board pretty early on, and it's going to be kind of reflected here in this mock draft. Steve Avila has that guard center flexibility, and kind of looking at my notes now, yeah, he's not on the board all that much longer, and actually, Steve Avila is going to be the very next pick to the Arizona Cardinals, so going back to John Michael Schmitz going to Houston, just pull up our lads and look at their offensive line and tell me where the hole is. I mean, it's pretty clear it's at center. John Michael Schmitz also has guard flexibility, so you only have Shaq Mason for one season. So if you ultimately find a different guy that you like at center, you can move John Michael Schmitz over to guard, and I feel comfortable with that. Plays with a mean streak, which, I kind of talked about this yesterday with Nolan Smith. Just kind of feels like it fits with the attitude that D'Amico Ryans wants to have that team playing with. So like it a ton, but I can say that about John Michael Schmitz going anywhere. And then for the Cardinals, adding an interior offensive lineman, again, guard center flexibility. So this could be your left guard immediately or your center right away. Took snaps at both spots at the Senior Bowl, looked good at both spots, and I do think he's probably the best interior offensive lineman from a pass blocking perspective right away. So once Kyler Murray's back and healthy, that becomes paramount because you got to keep that middle of the pocket in specific, but the pocket in general clean for Kyler too. You can hopefully see over the middle of the field, make some throws, and I think Steve Avila, considering other than Will Hernandez, who are those guys at left guard and center, I think Steve Avila is a big-time addition to that team in Arizona. Next, the Indianapolis Colts at 35. Some good value here, and they move on from Stephon Gilmore, so corner is kind of sticking out to me as a pretty big hole right now in Indy, and they run that cover 3 heavy defense with DC Gus Bradley coming back. I think Cam Smith would be an awesome add into that. Ran that 4.4 340, so I'm not really worried about the speed concerns that others have because I think that kind of answered that question for me. But I think he has the capabilities of playing at the line of scrimmage or off, man or zone. So I think no matter what defense you're kind of adding him into, makes a lot of sense. Also has a ton of ball production, a lot of PBUs. So if you put the ball in the air, he's got a knack for going up and finding it. Maybe not the most gaudy, build or most gaudy athletic ability, but guys just play kind of the same thing where he kind of plays with a mean streak and he's feisty. And I think that's kind of a thing I like in corners, and where he kind of makes up for what he doesn't have with some of the insane athletes like a Christian Gonzalez or something like that. But also the ball production is something that's going to stand out, and Indianapolis needs a corner. So go ahead and take Cam Smith 35. Have him go in the first round in plenty of mocks. So then we get to the Rams at 36. I'm going to go Felix Anudike-Uzomah. And last week I accidentally hit the wrong guy. So I'm glad this week I did my job correctly. So Anudike-Uzomah, 6'3", 255, good speed, a little bit of power, but really he wins with bend. And the Rams needed edge when they had Leonard Floyd on roster. And now he's gone. So, yeah, they desperately need to address this position. I think Felix Anudike-Uzomah, you can make an argument he's best player available. And, it's a loaded edge group. I mean, look at these guys. You could go with any number of these dudes, and I wouldn't be upset. by any means. So I'm going to go Felix Anudike-Uzomah here at 37 with the Rams, but really take your edge of choice. Let me get to Seattle at 37. This is going to be where Luke Wypler comes off the board. So again, I think these guys are going to fly off the board just because there is a pretty substantial drop-off. Like all these guys who are going to go here in round 2, and then there's everyone else. Now, I do like, the round 3 guys that I have coming off the board, but not as much as I like my round 2 crop. Luke Wypler actually weighs just a little bit more. I think it's like 2 pounds more. John Michael Schmitz, which, negligible in the grand scheme of things, but that, plus his great movement skills, great tape at Ohio State, one of the best centers in college football over the last few years, and obviously a huge position of need for Seattle, so plug-and-play starter here at 37. Next, the Raiders at 38. I'm going to go Adetomiwa Adebawore, at 6'2", 280, but with those long arms, I think he could play on the inside, and I think this team could still stand to add someone in that 3-4 DN spot. But also, depending on what Chandler Jones looks like, maybe he just plays 3-4 outside linebackers. So whether he's playing truly on the edge or moving inside, or maybe even once you get into your nickel defense and it's that 4-man front, I don't think Adebawore, with his arm length in specific, is out of position, lining up over a guard and attacking from the interior. So gives the Raiders a lot of flexibility across that defensive line, and they desperately need pass rush, so I think good value here at 38. That takes us to the Carolina Panthers next up. I'm going to go with Tank Dell. Now, I know they added Adam Thielen, and that's all well and good, but, a guy who's lost his step could definitely be a weapon from the slot, but I think that's where he's going to have to play now. And then I'm looking at their outside receivers, Terrence Marshall Jr., unproven commodity, Laviska Shenault. I loved him coming out of Colorado, but again, unproven commodity, so I'm just going to I'm going to draft Tank Dell here, and it's going to be those 3 guys competing for a spot on the outside. And the odd man out is going to become a gadget player, and that's why I'm kind of thinking it might end up being Laviska Shenault. But Tank Dell, maybe a little small, but awesome over-the-top speed, 6-foot wingspan too, so I think he'll be able to get off of press coverage. Also has a good release set too. Chris Broughtrunner was a very big part of the Houston offense, was a volume wide receiver, so where he's a little small, he is more than capable of being a go-to guy in an offense. And I think right now, Carolina's kind of looking for a go-to dude on the outside. I think Adam Thielen may end up being the guy who leads the way in targets next year, assuming he can stay healthy and play the full year. But I think Tank Dell could be that number 2 in the offense when it comes to volume and targets and whatnot, receptions as well. But also adding that mean over-the-top ability where Marshall's a good athlete, Laviska Shenault, solid athlete, but I think Tank Dell's just to another gear. Next, the New Orleans Saints at 40. I'm going to give them Derek Hall. Right around 255 pounds, so kind of that same mold as Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Actually, I think the arm length is actually a little bit longer for Derek Hall. Broad jump might have been a little bit better for FAU. I'd have to go back and, if you're ever curious about that stuff, mockdraftables.com. It's a great website. It allows you to compare and contrast different guys and see who some of their comparisons could be with their athletic ability. So great website if you've never heard of it. But definitely check out Derek Hall. He's got a really interesting skill set, and I think New Orleans could still stand to add one more edge rusher, both because they need a guy right now to be that third fiddle, which is something they have coveted, but also like Cam Jordan can't play forever. So we added Brian Brzee to be our Onyemata replacement. Let's add Derek Hall to be that guy behind Peyton Turner and Cam Jordan, but maybe if all works out, an eventual Peyton Turner replacement. And Cam Jordan is a pretty big guy, and Peyton Turner ran around 270 pounds if memory serves. So I don't think adding a 255-pound guy, maybe a little small for some in a 4-3 defense, but I don't think it's too big of an issue here, and especially if he starts out as like a DPR and as a pass rush specialist right away for New Orleans. Then we get to Tennessee at 41. Let's go Keon White here. So a little bit of an edge run here to start the second on top of an interior offensive lineman run, but 6'5", 280, and that's going to be the calling card. He has this really interesting blend of size and speed, and beyond that, pretty good run defender right away, which is nice. And last year, 7.5 sacks at Georgia Tech, started to figure it out as a pass rusher, but he's still really, really raw there. So kind of like what we talked about with Brzee and Myles Murphy yesterday, where it's like there's so much to like because of the body and the athletic ability and traits paired with it. But there's work to be done. And, I'm looking at Tennessee, and I think this is kind of a good position for him to start out into. And maybe he's the early down guy, and Arden Key becomes the third down pass rush specialist. They rotate in and out with one another. You also have Harold Landry, and maybe Keon White just is that third fiddle. Like he's that third pass rusher, just like we were talking about with Derek Hall in New Orleans. I mean, teams are more and more now implementing that third DPR specialist into their rotations, and I think Keon White, that could be an easy way to get him out on the field. But I actually think it'd kind of be the inverse, maybe from a Derek Hall, where Hall probably can only see the field in pass situations. Keon White, just because he is a little bit raw as a pass rusher, maybe he only sees the field on early downs and running spots. So it could be really interesting to see how they play White with Arden Key on the same side, potentially. Then we get to the Jets here at 42 and 43. So I am glad that this has now gone through, so I don't have to do it manually. And I'm actually these two picks could be the Aaron Rodgers, package. But let's just say the Jets again before any trade has come out. So hopefully I'm not looking like an idiot and this is already outdated. But let's have the Jets move back, and I'm going to give Chicago. I hit on this a little bit yesterday. I'm going to try to give them the 1-2 punch in the first 2 rounds that I think would have Bears fans, lining up in the streets, ready to win. They're ready to take on their Super Bowl parade. So we're going to go second, 2 4s. Yeah, maybe it'd be something different. Maybe it's a second and a third or whatever. But let's go with the second and 2 4s. Memory serves, I did this all with the Jimmy Johnson trade chart, so I'm pretty sure all this added up. But nevertheless, it's the point that matters that Chicago moves up and then drafts DeJuan Jones. Jalen Carter to be that 3 tech in Matt Eberflus's defense, and then DeJuan Jones to be that right tackle. You give Braxton Jones another year. I think he was pretty decent as a first-year starter and a day 3 pick. I think you give him the starting job in year 2. DeJuan Jones on the other side. And the reason I really love it for DeJuan Jones is because you add him an offense like Baltimore, if they have Lamar Jackson, or Chicago, where you have Justin Fields in the backfield, you can't rush those guys the same. You basically just have to rush contain. And that really takes away from some of the stuff I think DeJuan Jones could struggle with, those speedy edge rushers that could get underneath him. And because you're rushing contain, DeJuan Jones is so strong and he has such long arms that once he gets his mitts on you, you're done. You're neutralized. So because you're rushing contain, you are opening up a window in which DeJuan Jones can get his hands on you and then making you neutralized on the play. So kind of a perfect place for Jones to go, kind of a perfect tackle to add into that Chicago offense. Do I think he goes before 42? I'm kind of thinking that the answer to that is yes. So will he be available for Chicago in the second round? I'm not so sure. We already had to move up like 11 spots to make this pick happen. So it might be a little tricky, but man, if Chicago could add a DeJuan Jones to be that right tackle of the future, it would be an awesome add to that team. Next, the New York Jets. We're going to stick and pick here at 43 and give them Jack Campbell. This is kind of my CJ Mosley insurance because I still think they could part ways with Mosley, save a little bit of money against the cap, and Jack Campbell becomes a perfect thumper complement right next to Quincy Williams, who is a little bit more of the lighter coverage specialist type. So Campbell has that size, great run defender, knows how to fill lanes, and then at the combine, really solid 3-cone and above average 40 time. And for a guy that does everything else right and has those instincts to play an inside linebacker, that's a huge win. So I think he's going to go somewhere in the top 50, and I think he's a really, really nice CJ Mosley replacement for the Jets. Then we get to the Cardinals. They get this pick because of the trade back from 3 to 8. And here at 44, let's give them BJ Ojulari. We went corner, we went interior offensive lineman, and now we're going to add one more edge rusher. And, kind of the same thing we were talking about with the Saints earlier on. Myjai Sanders, 265, 270. Cam Thomas right around 270, 275. So I don't think adding the 248, speed finesse specialist that could probably stand to add a little bit of weight is anything that's going to really cost Arizona here. And plus just adding that third pass rusher. There's no guarantee, one, that Myjai Sanders is like a long-term starter. There's no guarantee Cam Thomas is either. So getting that third guy into a competition with those other two, if 2 of these 3 guys can prove that they got it, awesome. You now have figured out your starting edge position for at least the next couple of seasons. So I think it brings value there, but also a team that really just needs pass rush. So adding one more guy into the mix to potentially be that competition to elevate Cam Thomas, Myjai Sanders, but also just get the results this team needs. I mean, look at the tape and look at the production at LSU. I mean, he was the guy who was, and he wears the number 18, which is a big deal at LSU, like one of the best players on that defense. And could have maybe stayed another year to gain a little bit more, weight and bulk up a little bit, but I'm not really too bothered by it. And I think with some heavier guys, Cam Thomas, Myjai Sanders, that kind of fits with what BJ Ojulari should be, and then his skill set's complemented by those other 2 guys. So I got a fair amount there for Arizona, and I finally got BJ Ojulari off the board at a spot where I actually think he's going to go. He feels like a guy who always lingers way too long in my mock drafts. And then we get to Green Bay at 45, and I mean, how many mocks have you seen where Michael Mayer goes to Green Bay in the first round? How about getting him in the second round? I still like Michael Mayer. He's still my tight end 1, but he is, athletically speaking, a little bit limited compared to some of the other guys in this class, like a Kincaid, like a Musgrave, like a Laporta, or Tucker Kraft for that matter. But just a savvy route runner with soft hands, and I think can move across the offense. He can play inline, he can play the slot. Notre Dame even used him out wide. But I think that's part of just Notre Dame was light on weapons in general, so they were trying to do any and all things they could to get Michael Mayer open. So, adding this guy to be that inline tight end. He's also a good blocker, so I think Matt LaFleur would really appreciate that about him. But he's just Robert Tonyan, but better, and obviously cheaper too, and younger. So I love that fit. And again, how many times have you seen this type of projection in the first round? So getting him at 45 is pretty awesome value. Next, New England at 46. Let's go Matt Bergeron. Just in case, like in a perfect world, he could be the starter over Riley Reef, but also maybe Riley Reef starts the season, then you turn it over to Bergeron, and maybe it's just a true competition between those two, trying to make iron sharpen iron, right? So I do think they could still add a tackle. Yes, you could. It's another one of those offensive lines where look at the names on paper, you could probably sell yourself that they're done. But I still think they could find a guy, and obviously Riley Reef's on a 1-year contract. He missed almost all of last year, if not all of last season. So no guarantee he stays healthy completely this year. So Bergeron, at least his insurance brings value, but I also think long-term, like who's that right tackle in the future? Bergeron certainly could be that guy. And a really good player as is. I think he's NFL ready, solid player across the board with a little bit of his calling card being that run blocking, that strength profile. So it feels like a guy who can match with that New England. If they are truly going back to that, man blocking scheme, feels like a good fit for the Patriots. Then we get Tennessee at 47. They got this pick after trading back from 11 to 16. They get it from Washington. So at 47, I am going to give them a speed wide receiver, Jalen Hyatt. And that's actually going to do it for the Tennessee Titans. So still give them an offensive lineman, though I know they've done some work there. I still think they could use one more guy just to solidify that unit and future-proof it a bit. And then we give them an edge rusher, who's an interesting, kind of cog in the mix there with Harold Landry and Arden Key, and then now Jalen Hyatt as the trump card. Yeah, maybe they want a wide receiver with a little bit more size, or maybe they're looking for a slot specialist. A little bit of a preview for what I'm thinking about next week for Tennessee in the first round. But nevertheless, I also think when you're this ground and pound, we're going to beat you through Derrick Henry type of offense, that over-the-top burner when safeties start to creep up is a really, really necessary, counter to what your identity is. And you already have one big body, wide receiver in Treylon Burks. Do you really need to double down on that? I would argue that taking one of the smaller guys is okay here as long as you're getting that long speed that I think, man, you add that and then you're just really giving defenses fits. Do they play off and give more running space to Derrick Henry? That's a problem. And Treylon Burks, even for that matter, is someone who can work underneath and is great with the ball in his hands too. That could be interesting. Or do we commit to trying to take away that and the underneath stuff, and then Jalen Hyatt? Ask Alabama how many times that happened when they played the Volunteers. So yeah, I just think that really just kind of completes and rounds out that offense and gives defense fits, like I said. Next, the Detroit Lions at 48. I'm going to go Keely Ringo here. Yes, they've done a lot in the secondary, but Ringo falls all the way into your lap at 48. Feels like really, really good value. Still someone that wouldn't surprise me if he goes in round 1, but has the body type and the athletic ability to be a man press corner. Did a fair amount of that at Georgia. Sure, maybe not the most unbelievable tape compared to others in this class, but I'm still buying into the traits here, and especially middle of the second round, awesome ad. But Emmanuel Mosley, 1-year contract. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, 1-year contract. Like that ad a ton too, by the way. And it's cool to see him pairing up with Aaron Glenn like they did back in New Orleans. So there's a lot of pieces in that secondary. And Jeff Okudah, no guarantee that, I don't even know if they pick up the 5th-year option. Therefore, this would be his last year in Detroit, if memory serves. So a lot of those pieces that are there right now may not be there next year. So just future-proofing the position, drafting with the next 2 to 3 years in mind. And Aaron Glenn wants to run man press. And Keely Ringo, that will be his calling card if he works out the NFL level. So I really like that fit for Detroit. Next, Pittsburgh at 49. I'm going to give him Keanu Benton in this spot. I think an NFL-ready run stopper at the nose tackle position with a little bit of sneaky upside as a pass rusher and a big-time upgrade over Tyson Alualu and Travius Adams, who just haven't really been all that great over the last couple of years for Pittsburgh. Alualu was solid when he first got to the Steelers defense, but since then has kind of tapered off. So definitely I think it's an area where they can get better, and also with some uncertainty at linebacker, some new faces coming in, Cole Holcomb and Eladen Roberts. I think having a guy like this that can two-gap and plug the middle and help you stop the run, keep those guys clean, makes you feel that much better about those two guys in the middle of the defense. And again, sneaky pass rush upside here. So line them up next to, Cam Hayward and see what all might rub off and make Benton that much more scary as a pass rusher. I think that's a really good fit for Pittsburgh. Next, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I'm going to give them Antonio Johnson. You even got to hit on it a little bit in yesterday's video where it's like, man, if you were to add like a dynamic safety, you could play in the slot, play box, on top of all the things you can do with Antoine Winfield, it was a really interesting tandem. So now I have Antonio Johnson falling right in their lap at 50. I think he should go higher than this, but I don't know. He feels like a cold name and a guy who week over week is just kind of losing stock. So could he make it to 50? I don't rule it out. And again, have him be the nickel guy to replace Sean Murphy-Bunting, but it can also play that box safety role. And then wherever he's at, Antoine Winfield can be at the other spots. Like, these guys are really, really versatile. You could even have snaps where Antoine Winfield plays in the slot, and it's Antonio Johnson there at the free safety, or excuse me, the strong safety spot. Free safety is about the one spot I don't think Antonio Johnson may hold up at the NFL level, but that's what you got Antoine Winfield Jr. for. So, yeah, would love to see those two on the same defense and just let Todd Bowles play mind games with opposing offenses. Next, the Miami Dolphins, and let's go ahead and just finish that offensive line. How about a 6'8", just over 300 pounds off the tackle who moves really, really well for that size? Feels like a perfect fit for that wide zone blocking scheme, doesn't it? I would agree. So plug and play here at right tackle, multiple year starter at BYU, and you compare him to Brady Christensen. I actually think that the BYU Cougars have played a little bit more stiff competition than when Christensen was there, so makes you a little bit more comfortable. Christensen's been moved inside to guard, so maybe that gives you hesitation, but I do think Freeland is a little bit of a different story here. You are asking him to move from left tackle over to right tackle, but he's a good athlete, and he looked really fluid in the movement drills, and I don't know why, but that just kind of gives me a little bit more security maybe, and it makes me feel a little bit more certain that he could be able to make that type of switch. And also, the other thing you have to account for here is there's no guarantee Teron Armstead's going to play 17 games. Actually, I would probably bet that he at least misses a game or two. So that's also a component here, where it's like Freeland can be a right tackle, but also potential Armstead insurance here at 51. But I'm thinking and drafting him in mind with him being that right tackle future. Feels like a perfect fit for that offense. Solidify that offensive line. And then let Tua go crazy. And hopefully he stays healthy. And this offense is kind of everything that we hope and what the expectations are. And hopefully they live up to them. Next up, Seattle at 52. This is where I'm going to have Mazi Smith come off the board. Man, he's a really good athlete. And he might not even make it to 52 if we're honest. So I think Benton actually is when you talk about high-level run defender, sneaky upside when it comes to being a pass rusher, people kind of tend to think of Mazi Smith, but I actually think Keanu Benton is that dude. But nonetheless, you're talking about Bruce Feldman's number one guy on this freaks list this year, 6'3", almost 340 pounds. And week over week at Michigan, I think you started to see improvement in his run defense game. And year over year, you saw that. So trying to have him continue that trend. And, Al Woods right now is the nose tackle for Seattle. They need to get younger, they can get cheaper, and they can get better there. And I think Mazi Smith has that potential. You pair him up with Draymond Jones, too, who is a pass rush specialist, not really much in the way of a run defender. Mazi Smith could be the perfect complement to kind of keep Draymond Jones clean. Next, the Jets on the clock at 53. And now, this is a bit of a luxury pick, and I don't know if they would actually do this because CJ Uzomah, Tyler Conklin already there, but, just hear me out on this. Both those guys, let's say they're the start of this year, tight end's typically a position where it takes about a year. And then next year, Tyler Conklin's cap hits at $9 million, and CJ Uzomah's cap hits at $11 million. And I really don't know if I'm keeping either one of those guys at that number, and I'm almost certainly not keeping CJ Uzomah, who had like 400 yards receiving last year. If that, 280 maybe is actually what he had, at $11 million against cap. I'm just not going to do that. So let's draft Darnell Washington. Again, you're talking about Nathaniel Hackett. He's not Mike LaFleur, but same sort of blocking scheme. That zone was the OC under Matt LaFleur, so it's kind of an awkward relationship actually. But nevertheless, that zone blocking scheme, Darnell Washington with his movement skills and that size would be an awesome blocking addition to that offense. And, even if he does next to nothing year one and you're going to still roll with Conklin and Uzomah, there's nothing saying that you can't move on from those guys. Save money and then elevate Darnell Washington at starting spot. So, yeah, Jets fans probably aren't going to love this. Let me know what you think down below. Just be polite, please. Show some grace against me. But I think this is a move that could make sense down the line, right? And also, his blocking ability in that zone blocking scheme could be unfair when you take into account how good he moves for 6'7", 265. And, of course, untapped potential as a receiver. And having him sit behind Uzomah and Conklin maybe helps him unlock that. Next, the Chargers at pick 54. I'm going to give him a tight end here, Luke Musgrave. Continue on a little bit run here in the second round. 3 tight ends off the board. Wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. I could see 2 to 3 going in the first round. So Musgrave just gives you a different athlete there at the tight end spot. Gerald Everett getting close to 30. They did bring back Donald Parham, who big body guy, but we haven't really seen a whole lot of him on the field. So going to go ahead and just try to find an upgrade there. Musgrave, really solid athlete, good route runner, soft hands when we've gotten to see him a couple games this year at Oregon State, then again at the Senior Bowl. So prospect I really, really like. Didn't have the 40 I was expecting, but 4.61 is still not bad for someone who's 250 plus pounds. So just adding a different type of tight end there, someone who's faster, younger, cheaper, and just more dynamic and try to open up that offense. Furthermore, we saw how much Kellen Moore leaned into the tight ends that he had in Dallas. So I think finding an upgrade here for the Chargers will certainly pay dividends. Next, the Detroit Lions. And, this one's kind of complicated by the fact that Johnson Gardner-Johnson's there and Cam Sutton, inside-out versatility at the cornerback spot. I'm going to still go Sidney Brown, though. And again, maybe this pick's not all for Lions fans. I get it, but Johnson Gardner-Johnson's on a one-year contract. And Cam Sutton could end up playing outside corner depending on what happens with Mosley and Okudah and however this draft plays out. So, really, let's focus on Johnson Gardner-Johnson. I think this is ultimately going to be 1 year in Detroit, reunite with Aaron Glenn, who was the DB's coach in New Orleans, and hopefully I just ball out again, showcase that, yeah, I'm worth the money, and then go fetch us a bag the next offseason. And then insert Sidney Brown, who also, by the way, Tracy Walker last year of his contract. So you could be looking at potentially two safety slash, Gardner-Johnson is that, nickel corner hybrid-ish type of player. Sidney Brown then, if they lose Walker and Gardner-Johnson, is the awesome compliment to Kerby Joseph. Two guys both played at Illinois, and Sidney Brown is as strong safety and as thumper gets, and then Kerby Joseph is your prototypical ball hawk, cover a ton of field in that free safety spot. So they make for an awesome 1-2 punch. Now again, I am drafting 2 years down the line versus an immediate return on your investment this year, but I also think there's a way that you can get these guys, you can get them on the field right now. Maybe Johnson Gardner-Johnson's playing in the slot, and Sidney Brown becomes your strong safety. Maybe he beats out Tracy Walker. Maybe Walker gets hurt. So many different hypotheticals we could run down here for Detroit. And really, I'm just thinking, by the end of his rookie contract, if I have a safety tandem of Sidney Brown and Kerby Joseph, am I excited as a Lions fan? And the answer to that would have to be yes. So still think it's worth him going here at 55. And I think this is about his range. Didn't want to have him linger too far because I think middle of the second round is about when we're going to see Sidney Brown come off the board. Next, Jacksonville Jaguars at 56. I'm going to add some edge reinforcements here in Byron Young. 6'2", maybe 6'3", 250 pounds flat. 4.43 40. That's 98th percentile for the edge groups, and also 98th percentile on the broad jumps and like 91 percentile on the vertical. That's speed and that's explosiveness. And you see some of that at Tennessee, maybe not to the degree I wish we could see it. Still needs work in regards to, his pad level and some of those other, pass rush refinements. So I think with some coaching, that's when we'll really see that athleticism fully translated in him becoming a force on the edge. But also K'Lavon Chaisson is a pick that didn't really work out. You lose Arden Key. So I think you're looking for that third pass rusher, but also Travon Walker has the inside flexibility to have Josh Allen, Byron Young, and Travon Walker all out on the field at the same time. So would love to see the Jags get that edge rusher back. They lost an Arden Key, and I think Byron Young's potential as that speed rusher is kind of a perfect replacement for what Arden Key has kind of developed into. Next, the New York Giants at 57. I'm going to go Joe Tippmann. So I promised it. We're going to have a run on interior offensive linemen, and we're not done just yet. We're going to have another one come off the board in just a couple of picks. But Tippmann, again, pull up our lads and tell me where the hole is for the Giants offensive line. It's left guard and it's center. At least with Josh Azudu at left guard, you can tell me, hey, he's going into year 2. There's potential, and you can sell me on that. They need a center right now, really bad. So Tippmann didn't compete at the combine, but just look at his tape. 6'6", really fluid mover. And honestly, with his size, maybe he could even flex out to guard in a year or two's time if you find a different center you like. But I just like adding that type of an athlete at that size in the middle of that offensive line where they have a pretty glaring hole. Let's go ahead and try to finish up that offensive line overhaul that's been spanning over the last couple of seasons. And I think Tippmann, 57, like I said, all three of the top centers, not including Steve Avila, who I am calling a guard who can play center, but John Michael Schmitz, Luke Weipler, Joe Tippmann. If I had to bet, I think they're all off the board before pick 60. Next up, the Dallas Cowboys. And this is going to be the last pick that we have with Dallas. And I'm going to go Daiyan Henley. You could go tight end replacement for Dalton Schultz, but I think we started to see some guys last year, like, Peyton Hendershot, that maybe could step in to that starting spot. But I'm going to go Daiyan Henley. You bring back Leighton Vander Esch for sure, and that's a great add. And he's a guy who has and carries a lot of weight, so I don't mind Daiyan Henley at 6'2", 235-ish, and his rangy coverage ability next to Vander Esch, because I think Vander Esch can take on the blocks and keep Henley clean. Also think they could add a nose tackle. Maybe they're trying to find a veteran in free agency, or if someone like a Keanu Benton or Mozzie Smith falls to 58, maybe that's the ad. Try to keep those linebackers clean again. But adding Henley with Leighton Vander Esch, those are two really good athletes, but also in a team that asks a lot of their linebackers. And Dan Quinn comes from a zone background. They've been running more man in Dallas. Either way you spin it, Daiyan Henley is a really interesting fit. If they run zone, this is a guy who can cover a ton of the middle of the field. If you run a man, this guy can go stride for stride with running backs and keep up with tight ends as well. So no matter what the coverage call is, Daiyan Henley becomes a really impactful coverage player. And this is a team that just added Stephon Gilmore, already has Trevon Diggs, re-signs Donovan Wilson, adding more coverage capabilities. man, that Dallas secondary is going to be really, really scary. And really, back seven is what I mean to say there, becomes really, really scary. Buffalo Bills adding some interior offensive lineman depth and Cody Mauch at pick 59. I think they can add a guard, and also, maybe with some time, Cody Mauch could flex out to tackle. I think ultimately they're going to roll out with Spencer Brown at right tackle, which hopefully he does take a step forward if you're a Bills fan. But Mauch gives you a little bit of insurance there on the inside. I think they can certainly find an upgrade at guard somewhere, whether it's replacing Bates. They signed Connor McGovern, so whether it's left side, right side, pairing up with McGovern as a starter is interesting. Also, took snaps at center Senior Bowl, so maybe in a year's time as a Mitch Morse replacement. And he's still got a long ways to go as a pass blocker. Tight end converted to play O-line. And, I'm kind of biased to guys like that. I liked Bernard Raymond a ton in last year's class, and I think he started to figure it out this year with Indy. But nonetheless, I think there's a lot of upside in guys like that. And Cody Mauch is already one of those dudes where if he's out moving and blocking in space, get out of his way, because that dude's coming for violence, and he's gonna lay the boom on you. So really interesting add to this offense, and I think we're in an area where they can get better. But also now I just have to see Cody Mauch as a pulling guard leading the way for Josh Allen on a quarterback power. Who wants to take on Cody Mauch in a blocking situation, and who wants to tackle Josh Allen with Mauch in front of him? I think the answer would be nobody. So it's just something I have to see now in that Buffalo offense next year if it were to play out like this. Next, Cincinnati at pick 60. Repeat pick here in the second round. Julius Brents, one of my guys in this year's draft. I think he should go higher than this, but really cool athlete. And also, I'm starting to hear there's some teams that like him as a potential safety. So as a 6'3" safety, I'm listening. They just lost a strong safety, so maybe that could work out. Could he be a big slot corner too? Maybe. Mike Hilton only got one more year on his contract. I just think they could use one more outside guy, and that's kind of what I made this pick in mind with. Really good athlete, played at a couple different schools and varying defenses, so I think he's proven that he can, fit in a zone-heavy scheme, someone that mixes it up. And Lou Anarumo is a great defensive coordinator at, mixing and matching his defense based off the weakness of the opposing offense. So we'd love to see him add a guy like Julius Brents. And I think this could be a place where you really unlock the full skill set that Brents has in his wheelhouse. Next, Chicago at 61. We're going to go ahead and add an edge rusher here, that 4-3 defense. Isaiah Foskey feels like a perfect fit. Definitely think they can still use an upgrade there. Foskey, Notre Dame school record program holder in sacks in his career. Doesn't do anything that's super wow-inducing, but kind of solid across the board. But just knows how to be a pass rusher. Like, you compare him to Myles Murphy, and it's like Murphy has everything that Foskey doesn't, but then Foskey kind of has the one thing that we're hoping Myles Murphy develops, and that's having a well-balanced, pass rush set, and then knowing how to stack one move with another and setting up an offensive lineman to then come back and counter it with something different and layering one move on top of another. And that's something that, Murphy, Brian Brzee, and plenty of other edge rushers in this class, Keon White, have got to figure out. Foskey has that, but he doesn't have the twitchy athleticism that those other guys do. So give and take here, but I would love to see Chicago add one more edge rusher, try to find an answer there, and who knows, Foskey keeping him up there in the good old American Midwest, and maybe he's the answer on the edge. Also, I think gives you pretty much right away a solid run defender, which is never bad to add either. Two more picks to go through. Moving on from Chicago, Philadelphia at 62. This is just insane value here. Josh Downs, yes, I know Quez Watkins is there, but Josh Downs can do a lot of that same stuff and more. You're getting a more dynamic underneath route runner and pass catcher because of it. Someone who's more than capable than being a gadget player that Quez Watkins is. And 4.4, 840, I don't think is a bad 40 time whatsoever. 38-inch vertical showcases the short area quickness and burst out of the step and going from 0 to 100 in an explosive manner. I think this is just a better version of what they have in Quez Watkins is that wide receiver 3. So I don't think Downs makes it to 62, but hey, there's fallers in every draft. There's only so many teams and so many players, right? Someone's going to fall. And if Josh Downs just lanes in the Philadelphia Eagles' lap and you can make that offense even scarier, sprint the card in. That would be awesome as an add to that Philadelphia offense. Next up, we get the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to give him Rashee Rice. He's just the big body, physical wide receiver that they don't have right now. MVS has size, but he's a field stretcher. Kadarius Toney, not that big gadget field stretcher, and a guy who I would love to see playing from the slot. So in a perfect world, I'm trying to draft somebody who allows me to keep Toney in a slot where he was awesome at Florida. And then you have Sky Moore, kind of the same skill set. I think he can play on the outside, but speedy guy who is not, a possession type. That's not his calling card. So adding Rashee Rice, I think, just balances out that wide receiver room completely, and especially once you move on from Travis Kelce, having that possession type, or whenever he retires, that is. having that possession type ready to go, I think will pay dividends for Kansas City. So scroll across the top. Want to showcase every pick in the second round one more time. Be sure to let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who do I have going too high? Who do I have falling too low? Who's your favorite squad? Do you like the pick I gave your favorite team? And if you didn't like the pick, that's totally fine, but let me know who you would take given the board and where it was at that point. So let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoyed. Hit that like button if you did. And if you're new right here and want to see more draft content, just hit that big red subscribe button. But that is going to do it for me. Be sure to come back tomorrow for the round 3 portion and conclusion to this updated mock draft. But until then, my name is Tej, and I am signing off.